Okay, so if we have developed a story universe in which people can use magic, what are some logical reasons that we can have that only a minority of the people in that story world would be able to use magic? Come on in, bestie. Welcome to StoryPod, where we do the doing of story development together. Brought to you by Creative BFF. That is what we're going to be talking about today. So put your thinking caps on, put your story brain caps on, okay? Let's get ready to get these juices flowing, because that's what we do at StoryPod. We do this practice, we do these reps to build the storytelling muscles that are going to carry us through our own writing efforts and make it easier and more enjoyable for it to happen. Okay, for the story that we want to happen. Forgive me if you can hear the creaking of my chair, because it is a creaking and a cracking and I can't stop it from happening. All right. Before we get to that though, did you hear my elbow just pop? Girl, these joints are like Rice Krispies. Before we get into that, if you have a story question, as always, listen, hit me up. I will be your creative BFF, because that's what we do here. I'm here to help. Okay. You can send me an email at ash@creativebff.com, or you can go to my website, the aforementioned creativebff.com. I have a contact section that you can send me a message through. Now, we're going to do one of our favorite things here. Our, meaning me, one of my favorite things, answering a story question, putting our story brain thinking caps on, okay, getting the juices flowing. So let's avert our eyes, both of us together, okay, to the question on the r/fantasy writers subreddit by accomplished low 754. And they ask, what's a good reason to have few magic users in a universe where people can wield magic? Having only a minority of people be magic users simplifies things heavily and allows you to focus on this minority while writing. But what's a good reason for that? The most common is that people are randomly born with this sort of power, but I feel that this is very weak and just turns the characters in the story to a bunch of inexplicable chosen ones. Another reason I've thought of this is that everyone can do magic, but it takes a lot of effort to learn it. It's understandable, but depending on the applications of magic, it not be a deterrent. Who wouldn't want to be able to use magic if it means making your life easier by doing chores faster, being able to teleport, having self-defense potential, etc.? It's another weak excuse. What do you think about it? Ever seen a story give a proper excuse for that? All right. So, as always, the specifics of answering this question are going to be found in the specifics of the story that you're telling. I don't know why I said the specifics. I don't know why I said it like that, but it's going to depend on the world building that you do that will be the most beneficial to the story that you want to tell. That being said, as we know, okay, we already know that's the thing, right? Girl, my brain went blank for a second. I had some ideas. Okay, I have some ideas. They're coming back. So I think first and foremost, you are going to find the answer in the logic around using magic. Okay. We can also look to our own world, right? What are some things in our own society that used to be super beneficial to know, that were very, very helpful to yourself and to society at large, that have kind of fallen by the wayside, right? That only a few people do now, and most people don't, because there are better and easier ways to get things done that those particular things that have fallen out of favor used to be able to do. So if we're removing it from, if we're in a world where it's possible for everybody to do magic in some way, we have to give them reasons. We have to build something into the logic and structure of the magic in our world that is a deterrent to it, right? That's almost like a kryptonite a little bit. So for example, perhaps using magic, depending again on the structure of magic and how it works. Is it something, for example, is it something innate that people are born with, like an energy source inside of you that you can pull from? Or is it something that is kind of like another sort of technology in the world that requires resources and things outside of yourself? Those are questions, right, that you have to kind of answer about the logic of magic in the world. But perhaps it's something that does take a lot of energy, resource to use, to actually wield, right? And perhaps now, depending on the time period that the story is taking place in, let's assume that it's taking place in a kind of a more modern time period, based on the flow of history of the story that you're telling. So whatever the development of society would have been based on the history that you've set up for your story world. It could be that the things that magic used to be good for are just more easily and maybe more cheaply accomplished through technologies that are available. And so perhaps magic has fallen out of favor, has fallen by the wayside. Now the common person uses a tool or a technology to do what magic would have done, perhaps at a greater cost to them. If it is something that takes innate energy, perhaps using magic is very exhausting for someone, for example, who has not built the strength and the quote unquote magic muscle to do it. Like maybe you do have to like go to the gym, sort of, so to speak, the magical gym, to kind of build your ability, your stamina, your magical endurance. And those aren't unheard of things, I think, in when you are telling stories with magic, right? There are levels to your ability to use magic, and it requires work like everything else. Magic can just require work to build to a useful place, right? Maybe it's something that in order for it to actually be useful at a useful level, there's a lot of work that goes into it, some years of training. And perhaps back in the day when technologies weren't available, you know, kids started their magic training at a very, very young age, kind of like the way we start teaching kids to read really early, identifying colors and shapes and things like that. So developing your magical skill perhaps is something that takes years, to the point where you're able to wash a plate without having to touch it, and you're just using your magic to do it. In order to get to that point could take however many years of study to be able to understand it, to be able to lift it, to have the strength, the magical strength to lift the plate and turn on the water and do all the parts. It takes a lot of brain power, maybe spiritual power, maybe. Maybe there were sources of energy that are no longer as readily available and abundant as they used to be when magic was more widely used in the past. Maybe it's something that through disuse or through environmental changes, the people in your world have started to sort of devolve in their ability to use magic, because it's no longer necessary, right? So certain traits that used to enable them to use magic are no longer necessary in the wide scope of humanity. It's still available, it's still a possibility, but maybe even now it takes even more work than it used to develop your magic to a useful level. So yeah, maybe it's just impractical for the world, for most people in the world, to get to that level. Perhaps it takes very expensive training. Perhaps it takes what was I going to say? Like a certain standing in society to be able to get to the level where it matters. And it could be that you still have in the ruling class, whatever that looks like, whether it is like a monarchy, or if it's like a democracy or whatever your political structure is, perhaps those in the upper echelons are mainly the ones who invest in learning magic and using it, and they make their kids learn that, and maybe the kids are like, this is such useless information. I have a cell phone. Why do I need to be able to whatever? I have a car and a plane. I don't need to be able to teleport. That takes too much energy and too much time, and I don't care. I don't want to do it. It doesn't feel good when I do it. Maybe using magic actually is not a pleasant experience. So people are like, how can we not have to? How can we make our lives easier to where we don't have to use magic? You know what I'm saying? Maybe throughout the years of social development, maybe those who were particularly adept at magic were ostracized and killed. Sorry, that's a word I shouldn't use on YouTube. Wiped out, unalived, as the kids say on YouTube, because magic fell out of favor. That's a story that we see, right? Where some group of magic users does something heinous, and so now the whole group of magic users, everybody who does it well or whatever, they but now they become oppressed. They become suppressed. They're being hunted down, and so they hide. You know what I'm saying? So maybe there's something about magic, not really being something that most people want to be seen doing and using, whether it's illegal or it's just kind of looked down upon. Maybe magic is seen as something that, again, this will depend on the social hierarchies of your world, but maybe magic is something that is contrary to what we would normally think, that it's something that's seen as lower class, things at the, quote unquote trailer park, people. Sorry, no offense to those who are in trailer parks. Listen, trailer parks are fancy now. We've got some fancy trailer parks, but let's think about the stigma that we used to have that maybe still exists on trailer parks. Perhaps it is seen as just being low class, and now that we have technologies that do what magic used to do but do it better, so why would we take the time to use magic when we can use technology to do it quicker? Maybe it takes longer to do something with magic than to do something with technology. So anyway, I might have been able to continue going on bringing options, or maybe I've exhausted my list of options. But what do you think? What would be some reasons that if you have a universe in which magic is a thing that can be used, why would there only be a minority of people who use it or are able to use it? I'm very interested to hear what your answer to that would be. Please leave it in the comments below. Let me know what you think and how you would answer this question, how you did answer this question. If you have a story where magic users are a minority, even though magic exists in your universe, how did you answer that to make it something interesting and cool for your story? Anyway, listen, as always, a pleasure, an honor, a delight to see your face, if not in reality, in the spirit. Okay. Have a great day. Looking forward to seeing you next week. Okay. In the meantime, go for a walk, get some steps. Okay. Lift up something heavy, throw it around a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Build some muscle, build some actual muscle, not just storytelling muscle, build some physical muscle, because it's going to serve you well when you become an older lady, gentleman person. Okay. Love you. Bye.